So we are going to start on our backs. So bring yourself on down there. If you ever want to show up earlier, if it just kind of pops in your brain like, oh, yoga, you can always show up early and we could chat just like you were walking into the yoga studio. And you can also show up to your mat early just to start your own breathing, your own resting, especially since a half hour goes so fast. All of those are options available to you. But as you're coming down to your backside, you get to make this as active or as quiet for the body as you prefer. But per usual, we want to focus on the breath. We want to take our awareness into our inhales and exhales to measure how we are feeling today. And to bring a little bit more awareness to a specific part of our body, you're going to take your palms and you're going to place them right at your low ribs. So some of your fingers might be a little on your belly, like your pinky and your ring finger. And then like thumbs are right at that low rib area, right underneath, since we all have breasts, right underneath the breasts. And that's just to give your brain a little bit more of a focus on that low rib area and a little bit more awareness for the full 360 around. So just like a sports bra strap reaches all the way around you, imagine that your fingers, that area that you're placing your palms are at, that whole area right about there all the way around. So you're noticing the front low ribs, how they crest down towards your sides, closer to your hips, and then they reach back behind you and connect to your spine. And we're aiming to envision a band all the way around that part, and it stretches in all directions. Something soft and supple, maybe like a yoga strap, if you had a yoga strap around your low ribs there. So you're aiming to try to pull the air into that place, push it out in all directions. And then we're going to gently rock the ribs a little bit. So kind of like our cat and cow with our pelvis, same idea. If your rib cage was a bell, could you ring that bell? Could you tip that bell forward and back? Could you get a little ringing going on? You might press the low ribs into the floor, or envision that those low ribs are reaching up towards the ceiling. And you can time this with your inhales and exhales just to be curious, or you can just be moving without focusing on the breath as much. And as you're ringing and unringing your bell, you're tilting your ribs up and down. Notice if other things are moving as well. So to get your ribs to tilt, did your pelvis start to play a little bit? Did your shoulders move around? Are there other parts of you that are trying to actively engage? And maybe for a couple of tilts, you just turn all those off. It might mean that you have to kind of take your pelvis and sort of press it down into the ground, stabilize it so that it stops moving. Or you press the tops of your shoulders into the mat so they stop moving. And then get your little bell ringing on. And then you might try to make a little circle around. I know it's going to be not exactly a full rounded circle because we're on our backsides, but imagine that you're trying to clean the inside of a jar with your ribs. So if you're scraping all the way around, so you might get a little lift and a little circle in a couple of directions, or a couple times around, you go the other direction. And if you're thinking, Valerie, nothing is moving, I don't know. Well, there you go. You got some parts of your brain is not sure how to move as much. So a good place to toy with if you have some free time. All right, you can soften, you can let go of the ribs there, just let them be. And you're gonna bend into the knees if they're not already bent, plant the feet onto the mat. And you're going to lift just one foot off the mat. So take your right foot off of the mat and your foot will go kind of parallel to the floor from your knee to your heel. So that your knee is more or less stacked right over your hip joint. So where your thigh bone meets your pelvis, that hip right there. And then imagine that you have a rod from your knee to your hip and that leg, your lower leg, so your calf area is a rudder on a boat, and you're gonna turn that rudder so that just the thigh bone turns in and out. So you're gonna keep that knee stacked right over the hip, and your little rudder is what moves. So your foot is gonna come across the body towards your left leg. It's gonna reach out to the side. And if I were looking straight over your knee, it would stay completely stacked right over your hip as your little rudder of a foot rolls around. Yeah, good. I know it's tricky. If it helps, you can put your palm on the top of your knee to sort of ground down that hip so that the thigh bone doesn't shift left or right. It's just rotating. And then you'll pause on both sides. So you'll rotate in and your foot kicks out to the side. You kind of hang out for a moment. And then you can rotate inward and your foot's gonna kick across your body towards the left. Yeah, your foot comes in as your hip rotates out. Kind of the opposite. And then you'll switch it out. So take your other leg, bring it up. And same idea, that knee's gonna stack right over the hip and you've got your rudder of a calf. And it might take a moment, so you can always put your hand on that top of that knee to keep that knee directly over the hip. And then if your hip's like, okay, I got this, you can always drop the hand, but it might take a moment for you to just be able to rotate at that capsular joint and not move around too much. Yeah, good. I know it's tricky. And then you get the pause as you rotate inward. The foot goes out towards the long edge of your mat. And then you get to rotate your hip outwards. So your foot goes across the body towards the right. Yep. And then you get to bring the foot back down. If you want to take some little windshield wipies or some knee hugs before we come up to a seat, or if you're like, I'm ready to rock and roll, Valerie, you can always pop up. We're all coming onto our bottoms. Nice work. It's kind of a tough one to cue. You're like, don't move the thigh, but rotate it. It's tricky. All right, from your seat, you're gonna take your palms, you're gonna reach them behind you so that they act as kickstands behind you. You'll plant the feet onto the mat, bent knees, and then you're just taking a seated windshield wipe. So your knees rock side to side. Similar to what we do when we're on our backs, but now we're just in a different plane. You kind of get to move the ankles a little bit too. That's why I like this one. And we haven't done this one in a while, but I love, love, love this, this little bit of work. So the next time that your knees fall off towards your right, you're gonna come upright and lean into it. So it's like the knees are more or less kind of 90-90-ish. And your right leg is your front leg, right? The right leg is the one in front of you, and your left is kind of sweeping back. And don't worry as much about the back leg. You can have the heel closer to your bum or further away, kind of depending on where it's comfortable. But try to get a 90-90 action with that front leg. So by 90-90, I mean from your heel to your knee to your hip. You've got some right angles. You might need to adjust a little bit. The thigh might need to come in or out. And then that heel might need to come closer to you or further away. And if you can't get to 90 degrees, it's fine. We're just kind of aiming-ish, right? And you want to lean forward a little bit. So through the belly, through the waistline is where the bend is kind of happening, more so than like my head is coming down towards the floor. So spine is nice and tall, erect, and lean forward. And you might use your palms to walk a little left and right until you find a good spot where you're like, yes, that is the stretch, Valerie. That's the business. And you can stay here with this stretch. You can lean into it a little bit more. You likely are feeling it on the outer hip. Or if you want to add a little bit more action, imagine that your knee to your ankle and heel, that whole calf is pressing down into the floor. And if I had a scale under that part of your leg, the scale would be going up, 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 because you're pressing downward into it. You can always press down and release, press down and release, or you can just push and hold. It doesn't have to be 100%. It can be just enough to feel some extra things. And then the opposite of that, if you want to give it a try, is pretending you can lift your whole calf off the ground. So even though you're in this pressing downward position, as if you could lift your heel and your ankle up towards your face. Try to feel light there. I know some of you are like, "Ooh, that's my outer hip." All right, rest, rest, rest. So if you want to bring that left and right foot like closer to your inner thigh area, so it's left of that 90 degrees. And then you can take your left hand onto that right leg and twist a little. So it's a fun little seated twist. You've got some fun legs. If you prefer, you could always come to your center seat and then take your twist to your right. You can come out of that 90-90 feet action. Just take like a cross-legged action and go into your twist. You're still twisting. And from your twist, you'll unwind. You'll come back to your center. So you're going to get the heels back out, the feet back out in front of you. Take a few little side windshield wipies. We're going to take it to the second side, get some action going there. So drop the knees to the left this time. And then that front left foot, the one that's in the leg, the whole bit is more or less in front of you. That's the business that you're working on. So if you can get a 90-90 going or close to-ish, and then imagine belly is coming towards that side for the fold over, for that little extra stretch. So you're long and tall from tailbone to top of head, and belly comes forward. You can use the palms to walk a little left and right and be like, there it is. That's that spot I want to stretch into. And you can either keep the belly and the forward fold or lift out of it. Give yourself a moment of rest and relaxation and then go back into it. It's up to you. And then option, if you want to do more work, then knee to the ankle heel presses down, that whole calf presses that outside calf down into the floor, like you could almost rotate through the floor. And then if you want to try a little something different, imagine as if your ankle could rotate up towards your head. You feel light in the ankle off the floor. And then find your way back up. Center, maybe you need a little few more rocks and shifts side to side. Nice. And then we're gonna come into tabletop. So hands, knees. If Need a moment to rock and roll around, say hello to the wrists, say hello to the hips in a bigger way. You can always circle around and kind of get into those little spots in your joints. Everybody said hip work when I asked what if anybody had any recommendations, but I feel like that's always what somebody says, more hip work. So part of stretching is also strengthening. So we did a little bit of that all together. And if you want to add a little bit to your tabletops, I know some of you are just rocking around forward and back. You can also shift and move the palms, walk the palms a little further away from you or corner to corner of your mat. It just gives you a little bit more core work, and you can go really slow if you want, like lift the palm, slowly reach it forward like you're a kitty cat and you're trying to be as quiet as possible as you're stalking something. Or you can just enjoy some movement, play around, move the palms a bit faster. There's different effects, but you're doing the same thing. You're moving the palms around. All right, come into a down dog or some shape like a down dog if you prefer, a different version. Especially if the shoulders are like, not about a down dog right now. You can always have the knees down, or you can just pop into a standing forward fold. We are eventually going to get to a forward fold. So if it's better for you to walk your palms back towards your feet, or if you prefer to walk your feet towards your palms, we're all gonna come to a standing fold, somewhere on your mat. And you're gonna find your own way to stand. So it might be this rolling motion, one vertebra at a time. You might prefer to have a nice long, beautiful back from head to tailbone and a lift. Some like to take the journey nice and juicy, slow. Nice work, everybody. Okay, from your standing position, we're going to be stepping into lunges. We're going to challenge the balance a little bit today. So kind of what we have done before, where we point in an asterisk with our toes, right? It's like forward, side, out. We're going to do that with actual lunging motion. So feel heavy onto the left foot and root down through that left side, ground in so that you have balance. Bend pretty good into that left knee, and then the right foot's gonna lean forward, and then you'll step forward into a lunge. Yeah. And then you're gonna lean back on that left foot, and you're gonna try to come back to standing without much momentum. So you gotta use your muscles instead of pushing off the floor. And then we're going in an asterisk position, shape. So now you're reaching that foot towards the right top corner of your mat. You kind of set it down and lean in. Anything could be happening with your hands and arms to give you more balance. And then you lean back. You can get a little momentum going or use your upper body to lean back into it. I know it's tough once you get yourself out. So go to the side. You're like, oh, I can do that. That's not too bad. And then you're going to go to the back right corner. Going back is always so much easier. Our body's just designed a little bit better for it. Come back to center. And then step back into your lunge. And then one little bow. So palms face forward. So you get a little rotation for your shoulders. You open the front chest. And then whenever you're ready, just lean forward. Belt buckle and belly come towards that thigh, long through the head. And then press through that front left foot. Come upright. And then step forward to stand, because we got to do the other leg. You can really challenge your balance on the way there, or just step forward. Okay, second side. So shift the weight into the right foot, find the balance there. And then left foot comes forward, find, yeah. Lean into it a little bit, and without pushing and bouncing out, see if you can just lean back, lift. Step it back, yeah. So you find your asterisk, you find your own pace kind of. You're like, all right, I'm going this side. Lots of good fun stuff for balance, but also for your ankles and your feet. See if you can really sense how your big toe and your pinky toe are digging in, doing some work. Maybe the arms are really helping and playing. Maybe one side has a lot more balance than the other, and that's okay. All right, you'll find your way into your lunge. You'll take one beautiful bow. So open through the chest, palms face forward, and then when you're ready, you'll bow, reach it down, belly towards thigh, and then press it up. Balance your way back forward again. So find some fun extra bit if you want, or just step forward. And then shake it off, let it go. Lots of leg and hip work today. Okay, so find hips distance-ish. Toes might come out a little. We're gonna take a squat to the mat. So take a couple of squats. So as you start to come down, you might get to that end range where you're like, okay, this is about as far as I can go before I need to use anything to push up. And I'm just gonna lift through my legs. You might have arms out or in or somewhere else to kind of support and help. You might decide, I want to have wider feet or more narrow feet, just to kind of change things up a little bit. Nice, yes. Think about maybe one or two more little squats before you come onto your bottom. So if that means you have to bring your feet into a certain position to get you there, or if you decide to really pull you on down. You'll come on to the bottom. And then you'll roll onto your backside. We got a couple more moments where we're gonna work just a little bit more. Oh, some of you are taking the extra version down where you're like, the slowest roll possible. Some of us are just on our backsides, right? So once you're on your backside, thigh bones are gonna be maybe a little bit in towards your chest. The knees don't need to be perfectly stacked over the hips. They can be a little bit closer towards your body. But your legs are gonna be closed together. So thigh, knees, calves, ankles, all that's kind of together. And then as if you have stuck your knees together with some glue, the feet are gonna work apart and away from each other. So we're opening our feet away while the thighs and the knees stay together. Just a couple of times. We're giving our hips a little chance to rotate in. And you might look at your feet and see if one hip is able to rotate a little bit more in the other. just out of curiosity. And then we're going to take it in the opposite direction. So now your knees are going to be free. Your ankles are going to be the ones, your feet are going to be glued together, and you can open up like a butterfly or a book. Your ankles will kind of come apart as it's more like the inner edge of your foot, I should have said. That kind of stick together and hinge. And then any other little movements before you come to your final rest for those of you that are resting. So if you want to do knee tucks or rolls, if you want to add like a little twist here. Maybe I didn't give you a chance to do something very specific that you want to dive into. So it's up to you where you take your last few minutes of movement. For those of you that are here for the first half, thank you for coming, for showing up for yourselves, for sharing your lovely practice and trusting me with your bodies and your movement. That is such a huge gift. Thank you. But now it's time for you to rest, to let go, to soften. You did a lot of work. Did some good stuff for those hips. Maybe you found some new things along the way. And use your chance to kind of let it soak in, to let it assimilate. And rest as long as you are able to.